With the legal negotiating window open and free agency starting on Wednesday, which positions will the Broncos look to bolster now? These guys will answer that and so much more coming up on Broncos Beat. Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Alexis Perry, joined today by Cecil Lammey from 104.3 The Fan, James Palmer from the NFL Network, and 9 News Broncos insider Mike Klis. Guys, a really quick note off the top here. As we tape this show Monday morning, the legal tampering period has just opened. Nothing can become official until 2 p.m. Mountain Time on Wednesday, and the Broncos have roughly $32.4 million in cap space as of right now. So General Manager George Paton has made it clear that his philosophy is to build this team through the draft, but use free agency to fill some of the holes. So do you guys expect this to be a really active free agency period for the Broncos, or maybe a little bit more subdued in comparison to last year when they signed 11 free agents?
I think Alexis, he's going to wait and kind of see how this plays out. And I've talked to a lot of general managers throughout the league, and the thought process is kind of this. There's some guys that are, because of the salary cap and because of the pandemic, it's really not going to affect their market. Guys like Shaq Barrett in Tampa, or guys like Hunter Henry, who's going to be a free agent at the tight end position. But at the same time, there's also this whole second and third wave that is probably going to be impacted in some capacity. So a lot of GMs are going, well, let me just see. Let me just sit and wait. And maybe I'll make an offer to this guy. And then I'll just say, hey, this is our offer. Let me know in the next hour, or we're moving on, because there's going to be names out there. There's going to be bodies that you can go and get. But the problem is, if you jump in early, and jump in too early, there's going to be somebody coming along the lines that you might like a little bit more than who you jumped at in the beginning. So playing the patience game throughout free agency this year is different, guys, than any other year in the past, because of some names that might get freed up, not right off the beginning, but a little bit later, because of the way this offseason is working. So it's a very difficult one to navigate. I find George Paton being a guy that's not going to shoot for those top tier guys, but how do I fill some holes with the middle of the road group?
All right, well, let's start on the defensive side of the ball. It seems like we're right back to where we were this time last year, talking about the corner position. What do you think the Broncos are looking for in a free agent corner? And are there any guys right now that you think are a perfect fit here in Denver?
Well, I'll start in and say I think all corners, because they need corner help. They need 2 corners, one through the draft, one through free agency. And I would say a guy like Xavier Rhodes, who has familiarity with George Paton from his time in Minnesota, kind of got healthy, rehabbed his career with the Colts, set to hit the free agent market. And that's the type of player with that veteran experience that I think would fit perfectly into this Broncos defensive backfield, and you know, a guy that can fit in Vic Fangio's system. So you look to him, you look to other corners out there, Hilton from the Steelers with that speed. Like, I think there's a couple of guys. Rhodes would be at the top of my list, though.
Yeah, not on mine. He's 30 years old. I can see what I like about Rhodes is he's a tall corner. They need him. But you don't want Cortland Sutton getting open every day in practice with ease, as he did against the Vikings a couple of years ago. But it is a possibility. Rhodes is a possibility because of the familiarity that Paton has. But I do think they want a tall corner. They do have a need for a slot corner because of saying Bassey, I don't think it's going to be ready right at the start of the season, coming off that ACL that he suffered in December. So they need 2. I think they'll get 1 in the draft and 1 here in free agency. They need a defensive lineman. See what happens with Shelby Harris, what kind of price tag he has there. But still, I think you're going to need a run stuffer also because of Mike Purcell coming off injury. Those are the 2 biggest needs: cornerback, defensive line, in my opinion. And then we're all waiting to see if they do anything to strengthen that quarterback position over on the other side of the ball.
Well, and I will say this, Alexis, really quickly, is at the cornerback spot. Remember last year, the Broncos going receiver. Yep. There are many people in the league that think this is a very deep cornerback draft, and they could take multiple corners. And if that's kind of in play as well, I think Mike's kind of right. You look at the free agent side of things at corner, but also they could take multiple corners in this draft. But obviously, you're going youth there, and you'd like to get some guys that have to step in right away. And obviously, the free agent market will allow you to do that too.
Well, Klis, you mentioned Shelby Harris. Last season, he played on a pretty franchise-friendly price tag of $3.25 million. This year, Paton has said that he would like to retain Shelby Harris, but he is on the free agent market as of right now. So if you were George Paton, how would you approach this Shelby Harris situation?
Yeah, Shelby's out there in the market right now as we speak. And, it's kind of like last year. Shelby thinks he can get, and rightfully so, 10 million plus. We'll see. He thought he could get 12 million plus last year. I think the difference between this year and last year, it was a real strong defensive line market last year. There were 5 guys that really got paid, and Shelby got lost in the shuffle in the free agent market. This year, you got Davlin Tomlinson of the Giants, and then a lot of people think Shelby is the second best interior defensive lineman. So if he gets 10 million plus, I think he's gone. I don't think it'll come from the Broncos. If his price tag comes down to around 5 or 6 million, then I think the Broncos will be interested.
Well, we all know in order to be the best in the AFC West, the Broncos are going to have to dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs. And in order to do that, they're going to have to get after Patrick Mahomes. Now, that may have just gotten a little bit easier with the Chiefs letting 3 of their 5 starting offensive linemen go. So now that there's a little blood in the water, do you guys feel like there should be an even greater emphasis on picking up another pass rusher here in free agency?
The 2 biggest things you always need are to be able to cover and to be able to get after the quarterback. We saw that's what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were able to do, Alexis, to the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. The problem is not everybody has the horses that the Tampa Bay Bucs have on all 3 levels to be able to go and do that. But we've seen in Denver in the past when you can have a rotation like Shaq Barrett, who just got paid, to be able to come in and replace a Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware. Now, that's like a pipe dream type of group that you have going, but you got to be able to keep those pass rushers fresh. You have to be able to go after Patrick Mahomes. And I do, spend a lot of time in Kansas City. They've restructured Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, and Travis Kelce, to my understanding, to free up some space. There has been a plan in place for a while to possibly move on from both of these tackles, and they already have somewhat of a plan in how they're going to go about it. They're not as good right now as they were on the offensive line a couple of years ago, but they're going to restock a little bit. But to answer the question, Cecil, you can never have too many corners, and you never have too many pass rushers.
Yeah, it's all about getting after the quarterback and protecting the quarterback on the other side. And I think it's a huge emphasis for Denver to go back to those Super Bowl 50 days. I mean, when you could bring a first-round pick like Shane Ray off the bench because he was a backup, Shaq Barrett, as James mentioned, and I look at a guy that I've liked ever since I saw him with Von Miller at the Senior Bowl. He's an older player, but Ryan Kerrigan on the defensive line. You have a chance to a guy, veteran guy, sound guy, can come in, still rush the passer, get you 10 plus sacks this year. I think that would be a smart move for the Denver Broncos. And again, just finding ways to continually get after the quarterback and use your pass rush rotation to make sure that the QBs you face are under pressure all game long.
Well, don't go anywhere. With the free agency frenzy already underway, we'll break down the Broncos' greatest needs on the offensive side of the ball on the other side of the break. Welcome back to Broncos Beat. Alexis Perry here alongside Cecil Lammey, James Palmer, and Mike Klis. Guys, unlike the defensive side of the ball, it doesn't seem like there are nearly as many needs on the offensive side that the Broncos may look to tackle here during this impending free agency period. Cortland Sutton told us on Saturday's Broncos Connected show that he feels like defenses are going to have a tough time containing all the weapons they already have. So with that said, what is Denver's biggest priority for this offense with free agency just 2 days away?
Yeah, the biggest priority, not many on the offensive side, Alexis, but the one is quarterback. You've got to find that quarterback. Yeah, and it's about making this team better overall. George Paton said they will look at all sorts of options. They will be in on trade conversations, which we're not talking about right now, but free agent-wise, I think the greatest disservice you did to Drew Lock last year is you didn't put someone in place to push him. You can do that this year. You can do that with a Ryan Fitzpatrick, with an Andy Dalton, one of those type of quarterbacks. And James, while it may not be the big name that everybody wants, those guys are available via trade, if they're even available. Free agency wise, there are ways to upgrade this team, to make this team better. And just in case Drew Lock misses more time, because we can talk about all the positives with Drew Lock, and there are some. We can talk about his negatives. One of his negatives, he gets hurt a lot. So if he gets hurt again, now you've got a solid seasoned veteran that can come in and help you win games.
Who is the best guy coming off the bench at the quarterback position in the NFL? Hell, he did it when nothing even happened to Tua, and that's Ryan Fitzpatrick. He is able to fill spots and able to come in at the drop of a hat and can do so many things for your offense. But at the same time, and I think Cease hit the nail on the head when he said you did Drew Lock a disservice last year. I know they wanted him to come in and be the guy and feel like this was his team. But at the same time, I go back and watch those NFL films, mic'd up type of situations, and those lengthy conversations that they were able to ease in on between Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua Tagovailoa, and how he was mentoring him during struggles, specifically in a game against the Denver Broncos, to where he talked at length to Tua about, you're going to have games like this. You're going to have this happen to you. You got to find different ways to win. All of that needed to be in Drew Lock's ear last year. Now, I think you got to be looking at in terms of how do you, Mike, go about making sure you improve that position, because as we're saying, so many other spots on that offense don't need to really have that much improvement. If you do a greater sense of improving the quarterback spot, all the rest of them, I'm excited to see what these other positions can do.
Yeah, I think they're set everywhere but quarterback. Tim Patrick, if Cortland Sutton comes back, could be a number 4 receiver. And that's hard to believe. I don't think he'll wind up there. But on paper, that's kind of how it's falling. You still have the 2 running backs, Gordon and Lindsey. Tight end, you've got, I don't think Albert O will be ready at the beginning of the season, but still you're pretty well set there. And I know a lot of people don't want to believe this, but the offensive line is one of the better ones in the NFL now. Might be the best one in the division after what Kansas City did to its tackles here in the last week. So quarterback is the situation. I really haven't heard too much about quarterback lately. I don't know if George Paton's going to go big and try to wait out Deshaun Watson, see if he can get involved with Russell Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, maybe with the 49ers if he's thinking that way, or if he's going to go that veteran quarterback. You could also go like maybe a Mitch Trubisky and take your shot at a young quarterback between Trubisky and Locke. One of them is going to develop and emerge and reach the potential that everyone thought they did when they first broke into the league. There's a lot of different ways to go. There is no doubt, though, that they are going to strengthen that quarterback position besides Drew Lock and Jeff Driscoll like they did last year.
Well, Klis mentioned Albert O a little bit earlier. Cecil, I saw your Mile High Monday column this morning and was surprised to see that you pointed out the tight end position is one Paton should consider adding depth to through free agency. You know, there are people that would say that that's maybe the Broncos' lowest priority heading into free agency with Noah Fant and Albert Okwuegbunam. But is the need at tight end greater than some people may think?
I think there's a need, and there's going to be better players available. They're not in on Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry and ever those big name guys. But I looked to George Paton. I looked to the Minnesota Vikings. Kyle Rudolph's been out there for a couple of weeks now. And Alberto, maybe he's not really himself until 2022. We have to consider that and look at that situation and say, maybe it's a while before we see what he really should be in the NFL due to injury. Nick Vannett plays at a replaceable level, in my opinion. So you can bring in a Kyle Rudolph, guy that's a really good Y tight end and all-purpose, all-around tight end. That's a good blocker. Also a great red zone threat. And that veteran presence to go alongside Noah Fant, who still is just emerging and could end up being a top 10 or top 5 tight end in this league.
James, do you see another position anywhere on the offensive side that maybe they should look at?
Well, Alexis, earlier I said you can't have too many pass rushers, you can't have too many corners. If you talk to decision makers around the league, the other position they'll throw in there is you can't have too many tackles. And I think having tackle depth is extremely important. I know, and I agree with Mike. I think the offensive line is in a very good spot, but there is that kind of question mark over there at right tackle, right? With Juwan James, who opted out, and what kind of shape is he coming back in? How is he welcomed into the locker room? I think that's maybe the lone question mark. And then if it does work out, you have tackle depth at the same time. So I do think maybe that's the one little spot, but I agree with Mike. I think this offensive line is in a very good spot, but you can never have too many tackles, just like you can never have too many corners or edge rushers.
Still to come, Broncos GM George Paton didn't wait for the tape from Trey Lance's pro day. Instead, he made the trip all the way to Fargo for a field-level view of the North Dakota State product. We'll discuss what that might mean for the Denver Broncos coming up after the break. Thanks for sticking with us for this final segment of Broncos Beat. Alexis Perry here alongside Cecil Lammey, James Palmer, and Mike Klis. Guys, amidst this incredibly busy time for Broncos GM George Paton, he, along with scouting director Brian Stark and quarterbacks coach Mike Shula, managed to find the time to make the trip to Fargo to see quarterback prospect Trey Lance up close. Although some have ranked him as low as 6th amongst the 2021 QB class, Lance is projected to go somewhere within the top 5. Given the Broncos don't draft until 9, why do you think Paton made it a priority to see Lance in person?
I think he might be there at 9. I think there's a decent chance he might be there at 9. He's one of those guys that I think, first of all, I'd take him. I mean, he's quite the talent. He's quite the talent. But he does look like a guy who needs a year of refinement, a year of development. I don't think he starts the season opening day, but he won't be the only one George Paton takes a look at. He'll take a look at Mac Jones, Justin Fields. Zach Wilson is a guy I don't think will be there at number 9, according to all the draft nicks and mocksters out there like Cecil. But I do think there's a chance Trey Lance is there. I still am going to be surprised if the Broncos go there at quarterback at number 9. I think they will still go cornerback because it's a greater need, but we'll have to see.
I think it was very interesting to see George Paton in Fargo, because if you look at the other 8 general managers that were in attendance, almost every one of them very publicly linked guys to taking a quarterback in this draft and being extremely quarterback needy. George Paton was kind of the outlier of that group. So him going and watching in person, I think is a little bit telling, but at the same time, if you don't love this philosophy of George Paton, I think you got it wrong. This is kind of what John Schneider has always done, even when he had Russell Wilson, right? You go look at everybody. You go and take a look at everyone, because like Mike said, if he falls to you at 9 and you got a chance to see him in person and you really like what you have, and we don't know where he's going to be on the Broncos board, but what if he's sitting all the way up there and they never thought he'd be available at 9 and then they didn't do their work on him? I think this approach by George Paton of always going to pro days, which I've been told the same as Mike, he's going to be at these other quarterbacks pro days. This is what he loves to do. He's going to be in. If Deshaun Watson becomes available, he's going to be in. Even though he's not on the short list of Russell Wilson, he's going to go after everyone, Cecil, and make sure that he leaves no stone unturned. And if you don't like that approach specifically at the quarterback position, I don't know how to help you. It's not about guys' confidence and telling them it's going to be okay, you're our guy. It's how do I make sure that my team is as good as possible?
Yeah, George Paton's looking for love, because I've often said, if you love a guy, go get a guy. So if you're George Paton, you have to go see more. They changed his foot mechanics. His front foot mechanics are much better now. You saw great accuracy. It was a dazzling pro day. And I understand it's shorts and a t-shirt, but still, he went out there, he did the work. You can see the changes that he's made to his mechanics, which you already enjoyed and loved. I thought his throwing motion was a little bit long, but he tightened even that up. So you look at athleticism, the mobile quarterback is taking over in today's NFL. You don't want a guy that can kind of move around. You want a mobile quarterback that can attack you with his legs. Guy had over 1,000 yards rushing in these 17 games that we keep talking about. So I think it's great that Paton has this philosophy, and maybe they don't fall in love with Trey Lance. That's fine as well, because if he's there at 9, somebody behind him may start calling because the Broncos were there. So it's great gamesmanship, no matter who you're taking at 9.
And 2 things Cecil didn't mention, Alexis. All he does is win and not turn the football over.
You like it. Okay. Do you guys feel like he's somebody that would be worth trading up for, given what the Broncos would have to give up for a guy like that who would literally have to sit for at least a year?
I'd say no, because there's, there's questions about his passing ability. It still comes down to your accuracy. And even against air, he missed some throws. And, I don't have the total scouting report on Trey Lance. I mean, I love the guy. He did miss some throws. You're at number 9. You stay right there, I think. He's not the guy. You trade up for Trevor Lawrence. All these other quarterbacks, you don't trade up for, in my opinion. There's too much risk with each one of them.
Cease, would you do it?
Yeah, honestly, because he's the new generation of quarterback. The new generation of quarterback is going to look like guys like Trey Lance. It's going to look like guys like Zach Wilson. And obviously Trevor Lawrence is that type of player as well. So that type of quarterback, give him a year to sit and learn. You could have your franchise guy.
James, yay or nay?
Yeah, Cecil's right, though, about the change of the quarterback position. The more GMs I talk to, it's if you can't use your legs to get a first down on 3rd and 5 if nothing's there, that is now the new NFL. It's not the Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning style. It's changed. But I think the Broncos are in a better spot than these other teams. I mentioned those QB-needy GMs. You look at the Panthers sitting at 8 right above them. I think George Paton slow plays this, and maybe it is a little bit of posturing. We're in the quarterback market, too, because somebody's going to trade up. Somebody else is going to trade up. What does that do? That takes the players at the top of your board and they start getting closer and closer to you at 9 because people are hungry for quarterbacks. So guys that you have in that top 5 players in the entire draft are going to start sliding to you at 9. So if you're patient, this reminds me of the Chubb draft a little bit. You get a guy who's arguably the best player you think in the draft and he slides down to you. I think that is a good approach to have for George Paton. And then if it is that quarterback, you did your due diligence on him.
Yeah, can I I'm going to slide right in here. Who won the Super Bowl this last year, and who wins the Super Bowl every year, and how mobile is he?
Listen, that's what. But listen, I think I get what you're saying, and I had an argument I think on Cecil's network with some people about this. It's because he does it better than anybody else. People that can't process and do that and can't move, well, they're just not even in the league.
All right, guys, that is all the time we have for this week's edition of Broncos Beat. It is going to be a busy week. Cannot wait to recap next Monday, same time, same place.